Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, the youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry. Whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Paul Hamus. I am joined by two guests today and good friends, Ethan Warren and Justin Crow. Justin, a returning guest. Justin, how you doing?
Second time, feels great.
Second time.
Got my hat on and it's backwards. I didn't get the memo, but
If you don't know, we always wear hats on this show. It's kind of like a prerequisite for being on the show.
Yeah.
And
it also
Ethan
hides all those receding hairlines.
it does.
Yes,
There's
it
a lot
does.
of that at this table.
Ethan
we won't
didn't
talk
even-
about who, but it's there.
Yeah, no, we won't mention it.
Yeah.
So to not mention that person, Ethan Warren, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at Word of Life?
Yeah, so married to my beautiful wife, Ashley, 3 kids, Landon, Adeline, and Nora. And we've been at Word of Life the last 10 years down here in Florida. Josh, it's a great time.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it snuck up on us last year. We're like, wait a second, it's double digits. Okay, here we go.
Oh, wow.
And so we're really loving it. Served in ministries and camps here for most of those years. And then as of recent, just getting the opportunity to step into an operational role here and learn a lot of things and really just be able to serve a lot of our operational teams here.
Yeah.
It's a great time.
No, that's awesome. And Justin, why don't you tell us again, if you guys don't remember, what do you do now here?
Yeah, so I'm married to the wonderful Heather Crow, who also serves here at Word of Life. We are going on, this is our 4th year being on staff, so not exactly tenured, but we're getting there. I work as the assistant camp director for the Coast Pursuit Camp as well, and I work as the dean of ministries for the Bible Institute during the school year. So that is a very recent segue from one job to the other as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but
Well, no, and that's actually the topic of today's episode is about those segues, those trade-offs of
way to
position.
segue.
what a seamless
segue.
transition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Ethan, you used to be the assistant camp director.
I did.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was the assistant camp director and the dean of ministries here. And so working with Kyle, Kyle and I had 8 awesome summers and winters of running camp.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, 8 summers, 8 years ago, I was still at the Bible Institute, like as a student. And when you say, "Oh, I've been here working 10 years," I was like, 10 years ago, I was graduating high school. So
It's crazy.
So that's a long time. That's a lot of like
That
life.
makes you feel old, doesn't it?
It makes me.
It doesn't make me feel old, but it probably makes you feel
It does
old.
actually make me feel a little old to like consider that 10 years ago was high school. Like that.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd like be at that 10-year mark. Looking back, you're just kind of like, ugh, it's weird. But you're not 10 years out, from high school. So that makes me feel a little bit better.
Not yet.
But he is 10 years out from middle school, so what's the difference?
Oh, that's true.
true.
That's true. There's no difference. So we're going to talk a little bit about like what it looks like to pass the reins from one person to the other, because you guys have a not unique, I guess, but unique in the sense that you've both worked here for a good portion of your careers, in a job and in a ministry. Actually, all of it, right? I mean, you came out of the Bible Institute, started working here right away, right?
Yeah, I was serving here when Justin was a student,
Okay.
and that's how I met Justin, yeah.
Gotcha. And then the same for you. So you guys have both kind of started your careers here, and then you got to pass those reins on. You had someone pass the reins to you because the position you moved into was somebody moving on to their next position.
Correct, yeah.
And so, we just kind of want to unpack that. I mean, a lot of you guys out there, you're in youth ministry. You might be coming from being a layman as just serving in your church to becoming maybe a youth pastor. Maybe you're the youth pastor passing the reins on to another youth pastor. Maybe you're in a camp setting like these guys. And so we just want to talk, what does that look like? How do you graciously pass those reins to the next person and set them up for success? So that takes me into my first question, which what did it feel like coming into the role? And we're going to do it from the perspective of the assistant camp director. Okay. We won't talk much about your new role, but more about like what it looked like coming into that role and then what it looked like passing it on. What did it feel like when you realized you were going to be the assistant camp director and kind of like looking at the responsibilities for the first time?
Yeah, and so I think to set a foundation for that question would be, how do you view endings? Like when something comes to an end, how do you view that? Do you view it positively or negatively? And I think it's a great way to set the tone for this question. I'm reading a book right now by Dr. Henry Cloud, Necessary Endings, talks a lot about this, and it's super helpful. But if you view endings of something that you love as bad, then you put yourself in a tough spot. And so choosing to look at an ending of something that I loved so much as a positive thing, because it's the only way to grow and get to the next phase of whatever God has for you. That really sets the tone for this. And so viewing this as a growing opportunity, but also a calling. And so how did it feel? It felt a lot of ways. And so it felt scary. It felt awesome. It felt, honestly, a lot of value in the sense of, a lot of like, wow, this is, I'm a little bit, blown away by the fact that they would ask me to do this. And so it feels a lot of different ways. And, but ultimately I think the only way to serve effectively in ministry is to be serving in the spot that God has you. And so if you're anything more or anything less than right where God wants you, I think you will tend to struggle.
Yeah.
There's still effectiveness there, but you will tend to just really wrestle, I think, a lot more. And so I think the only way to really tackle those scary parts and man, am I good enough for this? What if I don't cut it? Like the only way to really defeat those aspects is to be in the calling and follow the Lord's leading on that. So
that makes sense. So who was in that position before you then when you were looking at that? Like who was in the assistant camp director position?
So the assistant camp director position was kind of funny. It was, there were only 2 people at the time. Kyle and we went down to 2 people. And so before me, would have been Jay Sanders.
Okay. Yeah.
Would have been that role. Yep. Jay Sanders and Joel.
Gotcha.
Corrales working with, working there at the same time. So Kyle and I kind of stepped in. We all everything just kind of started to transition all at the same time there. And so.
Gotcha. Okay. So that was a whole other level of like.
Yeah, there was a lot of moving pieces there.
Yeah.
And that's also when Rich really stepped out from camp into.
Okay.
This director, vice president role here in Florida. And so there was a lot of moving pieces there, a lot of people doing different things. So really, there was a lot there to process at 22 or 23 years old.
So like you're looking out over this new responsibility, but it's like brand new. There's no one really there to like walk you through it. You guys are kind of all moving into these new positions simultaneously. So how's that differ from what you're kind of experiencing now? I mean, how long have you been in the camp director or the assistant camp director position to start?
A couple months.
Yeah.
And so I really only got to do prep work. I haven't even gotten to walk through a season of pursuit camp or summer camp yet. And so this is very fresh. I'm still processing a lot of it. The mixed bag is definitely, I think Ethan nailed it right on the head. There's going to be positive and negative things. I'm extremely excited. I'm very thankful for the opportunity. I think the level in which I'll be able to be involved and help cast vision is something I've been looking for. And I think is going to be fun and helpful. And it's coupled with the thing that I had to process through negatively, where the role that I had before this, I loved. It was like my dream job. I wanted to do it so bad, and I did it for 2 years. And I knew when I had to leave that role, it was going to feel a little bit like I was leaving a piece of me behind. I haven't fully felt that yet because it's been a busy season. But I found a good way to process it and to think about it is what I've gotten to experience and what God has taught me through that is going to be there for somebody else, and it's going to look different, but someone who has the heartbeat, whoever comes behind me, whoever has that heartbeat, I'm so happy for them. They're going to, you've got to find the joy that the next person behind you is going to experience what you've experienced, grow the way you've grown, have the opportunities. And that's kind of helped me walk through a little bit more of the, this is for somebody else, and I get to help cultivate their experience doing that job, which helps me really get excited and passionate and pray a different way about it, honestly, and less of a Lord, help me get over this. I'm sad. God, help me to be excited and to be available and to honor you and to be a vessel for what you want in this person's life and encourage them and comfort them. And it changes the way you pray about it. And so,
absolutely.
That's kind of been the experience for me. I think there will be a day in midsummer camp where it's going to hit a little bit. I might shed a tear or two, but it'll be good. It'll be good.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you guys have a lot of responsibilities in a position like that. As an assistant camp director, I mean, you're doing the operations of camp. I mean, walk me through what's it look like? What's your day-to-day, or if you could give a job description of an assistant camp director, what does that even look like? Yeah,
well, a couple of things. One of the things that the ministry of Word of Life does so well is just giving young guys tremendous amount of responsibility, young guys, young girls, tremendous responsibility, and giving us the opportunity to either fail or succeed. And always coming alongside to succeed. But it also really helps you know at a young age where your passions are,
Yeah.
where your skill set is.
Yeah, that's true.
Identifying those at age 22 versus age 40, a big difference, really helps shape and mold you. But also the ministry understands that risk that comes with risk. And
it really does.
So I'm super grateful for that. And the ministry right now is full of 30, 40, 50-year-olds who were all given great opportunities at 18 and 19 and 20.
Yeah.
And that's what's really shaped the growth of our ministry.
Yeah.
Secondly, what Justin doesn't know is we had to know Justin could cut it, and so we had to like throw some tests at him. And one of those was actually during Pursue Camp last year. I would just give him like half my work, and I'd go to Dunkin' and I'd be getting coffee and I'm hanging out. Like I'm just kind of at a distance, making sure, because we had to know he was going to respond in a way that wasn't like what am I supposed to do with all this work? Because as an assistant camp director, that's your job. Your job is you might feel like a shovel is just dumping on you all day long of here it is. And that is the job. Yeah. And it's a calling. It's not something that everybody wants to do because you're not in charge. But you have the responsibility as if you're in charge. Yeah. So you have to be able to accept that and not only accept it, but love it. Yeah. And so, I would just shovel stuff at Justin all day long.
Did you know it was happening?
He knew a little bit of it.
Okay. I did. I was a little paranoid because I knew that there were certain things that were being tested, but there are also things I would come to him like, is this a test? I'm like, no, it's not that. It's not.
Yeah. We probably cloak and daggered that thing a million different ways.
That's funny.
But we had to know he would respond in a way that was, wow, I love this. And which is what he did. Everything he kept telling me was give me more, give me more, give me more. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's what we need. And that's what we're looking for. And so, that was circle back around to that question again.
The first question?
No, the second one. What you just asked.
Oh, geez.
What exactly
the range of responsibility?
The day-to-day.
Yeah.
And so just leading that into the day-to-day, make sure that he would want to do that. But I'll give my take and then you give your take from what you've seen. But so much of that day-to-day is, Kyle and I have really had quite the dynamic between the two of us because it's not just professional, it's personal. Mm-hmm. And so our families hang out together, it goes a little deeper than just maybe the surface level of that professionalism. And we consider ourselves to be like among best friends. And so, looking at that, like we can read each other. And so every day is a little different, but some of that's based off of he can see when I'm having a bad day, I can see when he's having a bad day, and we have to be able to help each other. Yeah. And so that day to day, it really does involve the way I would always try to treat it is I would try to wake up and look at camp every day as if I was responsible for all of it.
Okay.
Knowing that I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I tried to look at it through the lens of I'm responsible for all of this.
Yeah.
And if it's something that's not going right, I want to assume that that's my responsibility. And what I want that to do is I want that to create like about a 70% funnel where 70% of the day-to-day that happens at camp, Kyle could know about all of it if he wanted to. Mm-hmm. He could have access to anything he wants to. He could go talk to he can have access to anything he wants to. But that at least 70% of the day-to-day would never reach him. And so some days I would be better at that than others. Some days I'm like, it's like, hey boss, sorry, it's about 20% today. Like, everything is hitting him. Yeah. Because what people don't see about the camp director's responsibilities is that it's so fluid, and at any given moment he could have, 10 different leaders to meet with or anything else. And there's so much to that. So much time. And the only way you can really minister effectively in that role is if you have somebody who is really hacking through that day-to-day stuff and keeping it off your plate. Yeah. So that's kind of that aspect, but it includes my assistant camp director responsibilities included all of operations, working with our facilities team, working with our food service team, all of the moving parts throughout campus, the outdoor activities, all those things. With Justin actually has been the majority of that involvement through his camp crew involvement. But all those moving pieces and really just that entire guest experience, from the moment they enter the property, the moment they leave the property, what did they come in contact with? Yeah. And so it typically ends up involving about 200 to 220 people that are all serving underneath that umbrella of operations,
trying to coordinate
and camp crew and everything else. And so it's a lot of people involved too. It's a balance of both.
Yeah. So. A lot of moving parts, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just
and
tons of
every day is a little different.
Yeah.
So
thanks.
Yeah. I definitely, from the overview of getting to experience a little bit of it, and definitely watching him and kind of, I'd peek in his office and sometimes I would just be like a little kid, like, hey, what are you doing? Just because I wanted to know what's going on when he's in his office clacking away at the computer and none of us are involved in it.
My daughter does the same thing when she comes to visit at work. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's how you learn.
She just kind of, she comes up and I'm sure you didn't like climb onto his knee or anything.
No, that'd be weird.
How do you like that little 2-year-old girl comparison there?
Yeah. She's only a year and a half if that's a consolation.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
It's only condescending if I let it be.
There you go. There you go.
Exactly.
Anyways, another aspect of being the assistant camp director, sometimes reeling it back in. So anyways, back to that.
Yeah. That was a test. Here we go. Just like from before.
Let's reel it back in. Okay. See, was that good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'm caught up.
Anyways, really what I've seen is he helped me understand it is a service position.
Yeah.
Like your job is sometimes, you're headed towards something. Mm-hmm. Kyle has this vision and he wants to plow through and make this thing happen. Mm-hmm. My job is to look down the road and see there's a speed bump. I'm going to run out there. I'm going to pull the speed bump off the road. So by the time him and everybody else that he's leading gets there, they're not on the road.
You have a mosquito.
You got it?
There you go.
Dude, look at that.
I'm so sorry.
You just served me.
Service position.
That
was just a really big mosquito. It had to go.
Really, it was. I saw it fly up, and I was trying not to laugh.
I felt it bite me. It's going to itch. Yeah.
That was brutal.
But yeah, so that is the core aspect of the job.
Yeah.
I think so. One thing that's cool is the differences. I think this can kind of allude to the topic of the changing of the guard. Mm-hmm. What people are good at versus the next person who comes in, and how do you use your strengths versus where you're different? Because I have an operational mindset. Mm-hmm. I can look at something that needs to be built or fixed, and I can see those things. Mm-hmm. But the way that I would describe it, he walks in the room and he says, that light's broken, that one needs a new fixture, blah, blah, blah. I walk in a room and say, that light's not set up the best possible way to shed light on this table. Like he thinks more what needs to get fixed, what needs to be repaired.
That's good.
I'm thinking about how does it work? How does it effectively accomplish what it's moving towards? And he thinks the way I think sometimes, and he has that mindset, but it's the first thing you see. And so where he dealt more with this needs to get fixed, this needs to get repaired, this is like, he can look down the road and say that go-kart's going to break in 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That go-kart's going to break in 6 months. Yeah. For me, I'm thinking
then if it's 6 months comes and it's not broken, I just go over there
and kick it a couple times. Sure exactly. I'm
just kidding. I don't do that.
I'm thinking in the go-karts, okay, how are we most efficiently getting people through in a way that's giving them a good time, accomplishing what you're looking for. And so I'm thinking this might be fun. And if we do it this way, it's going to be a smoother system. Gotcha. But I'm not thinking about the fact that if we do that, it's going to make it break in 5 months instead of 6 months. And so strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. And so the way that I do the job, the overarching, this is your job description, it has to be the same, because at the end of the day, a job is created, but the spin that you're allowed to have on it, the flavor you can have, and the different things that passion projects, I think is what you like to call it, different things that when your job description's done and you've done everything, what are the things you seek to improve on? Yeah. I want to work on mass communication and having everybody on camp at a same communication platform, because I think that's the next step. Sure. And so some of the facilities things might not improve at a rate that when he was in charge, but some of the systems that we use may improve faster than. And so it's the same role of, okay, what's the roadblock I see down the road? The next speed bump is mass communication. That's one thing that people always try to bring up, and like communication, it's, and centralizing that and giving people the opportunity to say, hey, camp may not have run as smooth as it could have because of this thing. It's caused road bumps. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to find a solution. I'm going to fix it before they even get to it. Yeah. So that's philosophically, that is what I understand the job to be. And so
when you're passing the reins on, it kind of comes with the territory of realizing that the next person's not going to do everything exactly the same as you are. Right. Yeah. And especially, you guys out there who are probably going through that same thing, either in youth ministry or you're a lay leader or whatever that looks like. You got to realize that when you're coming in, that person before you did things differently, but it doesn't mean they did things inefficiently. They just did it differently. Yes. And that means the same thing when you're passing on the reins, then that when you're passing them on, you're realizing that they may do it differently, but it doesn't mean it's inefficiently. Yeah. Is that something you guys have experienced then working with each other in this scenario?
Yeah, like he passed the core of what the job is to me. I know the core of the job, and he's even talked about this is the way that I've done it, but you may do it differently. And so I think he's very well past that baton in the same way of understanding. You have to understand why is the job there.
Yeah,
he's not passing a new job with a new description and a new purpose for it. There, it's the core of it's the same. Yeah, and so I would say definitely.
Yeah. So that takes me to my next question then, which is, you guys have just gone over and we've spent a good time talking about just the sheer amount of responsibility, the breadth of what you're trying to accomplish. And the one thing you said that I really want to hone in on is the desire and the need to like serve and what that looks like. How does that translate into balancing the life that you have with your families? I mean, you have 3 kids. Yeah. You have no kids at this point, but like, you also have a wife and you have a social life and you have all these things that come along with just living life as a Christian.
I have a wife who wants kids. I don't know which more responsibility, a wife that has kids or a wife that wants kids.
Well, I think the latter, because I mean, I know that my daughter is a ton of extra, good work, but definitely extra.
You guys can contribute when you have 3.
Yeah. No, you definitely have me beat.
I have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, that's fair. And I like last episode we talked, Kyle said about having a 16-year-old and I said, listen, I can give insight on teenagers, but I can't give insight on having a teenager. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what's it look like? I mean, you have this responsibility of your family. You have this responsibility to your local church and community, which I know you're both actively involved in your churches. What does that look like? I mean, I know that's a broad question, but how do you find that balance?
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
The one thought that I have that the Lord has been honestly teaching me very practical things about is at the end of the day, just go home and love her. I have a wife that's one of the things I love about her. She's pretty low maintenance. She's really easygoing. And so she's very patient. If I come home on a long day of work and I veg out the rest of the day, she might be a little bit disappointed, but she understands. But going home and her things as acts of service. And so like going home and it's been a long, crazy day and you got pulled into 2 extra meetings and this thing blew up and you had to go fix it. Going home, I could choose to be exhausted or I could see the dishes, which I know I'm okay with doing dishes. She doesn't like to. And so for me, it's like, hey, this would mean so much to her and she will feel so valued. And it's something I could do to remind her, like, no matter how tired I am, I love you. Yeah. And I could look her in the eyes and tell her, hey, no matter how tired I am, I love you. And then go and sit on the couch. She'll hear it, but that's not the language that she speaks. And so still giving consideration to her needs and the way that she feels loved and choosing to do that no matter how you feel. That is how I found the best balance is you've got to remember, like, not just the way that you would do it, but the way that it means something to them. Yeah. I'm still learning the whole church thing. And I honestly can't speak a whole lot on that, but that is the one thing that I have learned about the marriage aspect of it is no matter what responsibility you're given, like speak her language, love her the way that she needs to be loved, not the way that you feel like you have the energy left to do.
Yeah. Cause you have large time constraints. So you're just being intentional about the value of the time that you have within the constraints.
Yeah. Okay. And for me, it's words of affirmation. So I can go home and tell her for 30 minutes how much I love her, but that won't mean a fraction what it means if I just go over and do the dishes.
Yeah.
But I have to be conscious of that because that's not the first way that I think. Sure. The first thing I think is go home and tell her. Yeah. But she doesn't receive that the same way. So being conscious of that and serving her how she needs to be served, rather how then I would naturally do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I would say, just to preface, I've come a long way in this, initially,
10 years,
age 22 to age, 30, way bigger of a difference of how I handle this and the way I respond. And, my wife and I really struggled early in our marriage with camping ministry. Camp became something that my wife didn't like because of the time consumption from me. Yeah. And it took us a while to realize where the problems actually were. And it was within both of us. And as the Lord refined those out of us, it really transformed our marriage. It transformed our ministry. Yeah. And it really in a great way. But I like to think of it as a dial. So Frank Reich, former head coach of the Colts. Okay. It's pretty fresh. Yeah. He always talked about it with their run and pass game. Like it's like a dial, and at any point in the game, I'll turn it, Yeah. like talking about that balance of how do you know when to pass, when to run? And he's like, it's a dial, and I move that dial. And if that dial's on run, we're running the ball. If that dial's on pass, we're passing the ball. It doesn't matter what people's opinions are. This is where I'm at. Yeah. And I liked it. I like that visual. That visual helps me looking at that as a dial. When you think of your church involvement, your ministry here, like my ministry here, my family, also maybe adding to that dial, even just rest, nobody asks you what your work-life balance is when you're on vacation.
Yeah.
It's not a balance. It's a dial. Yeah. The dial turned. I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
So why isn't it that way anywhere else? Like look at that. And in our family, like it's the reality is my wife knows training week of camp, she's not going to see me. The dial has turned. There is no way for me to do what I need to do and be okay. Yeah. And balance everything the way that maybe someone thinks it should be balanced. Yeah. Compare that with any career field you want where someone travels for their job and they have a week where they're on the road. Well, what was your family life balance that week? Well, they were gone the whole week and they worked 70 hours so that the next week they could come back and be home more. Yeah. The dial turned. Yeah. And so I think it's important to have a little bit of a visual mindset and understanding mindset, but so much of that works because of our marriage dynamic. At the end of the day, we have learned to communicate about the dial. Because sometimes I would just turn the dial and not say anything. Oh, she's like, well, what in the world's going on? Well, I turned the dial and she can't see it. I think you got to put that dial on the table when the kids go to bed and say, here's where we're at. Yeah. Here's where we're at.
So you're saying we should get a physical dial.
Oh, absolutely. Actually. You should put it on your wall. Hey, maybe that's a product right there.
Yeah. The Stacking Chairs official dial.
Stacking Chairs dial. Let's go. And
man, I feel like you can be so passive with that. You put a sleep dial on the wall and you get tired, you just walk over, good night.
Yeah, I don't recommend that. Don't do that. So the other aspect of this is as that dial's turning and as your ministry, as my kids are getting older, one of the things that we were able to do this summer was my oldest two kids really started liking coming to the meetings and stuff. And so as I'm on my 8-week ministry dial of these 8 weeks are just long. It's a lot of hours and it's a little bit unbalanced in a lot of ways. And so looking at that and instead of playing the victim, I think we do that sometimes where we're just like, it is what it is. And first of all, I signed up for this. Okay. My family. So we signed up for this as a family, first of all. Yeah. Second of all, why don't we just do stuff together? Like, why would I not take advantage of that in an atmosphere in which I love the atmosphere here? If my family shows up on campus and they're here for half a day, no one's ever going to come ask me and be like, hey, were you as productive as you should have been while they were here? Yeah. No, if they were here every day, I'm sure there'd be a conversation, but no one's ever going to ask me about that. My family's welcome here. Yeah. Every family is welcome here. We have that staff family atmosphere. It's very important. And so what can I do with my kids? Yeah. What can I take them with me to do and throw them on the 4-wheeler with me and off we go. And how can we incorporate that? Yeah. And before you know it, and there's so many more opportunities I've had with my wife too, doing ministry with camp crew and other things like that. Before you know it, this dial is a full on ministry, but before you've known it, your dial all of a sudden has 3 different arms on it and you're with your family, you're ministering, you're accomplishing your job. You're doing all those things at the same time in an atmosphere that's not only approved, it's encouraged. I mean,
so I'm sure that can be different for each family too. I'm sure
absolutely.
That there are going to be
it wasn't that way at first.
No, for sure.
And we have a 2-year-old and that shuts some doors there. There's some things I can do with my 8-year-old that I obviously can't do with my 2-year-old. But that dial's constantly turning. Yeah. It's constantly evolving. Don't just let it sit there.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of how a farmer's family kind of operates. I mean, the kid might go out on the tractor with his dad all day and sit in the big cab and they might go and just ride the fields all day. Yeah. And the family is a part of the career because it's how the family and the career is kind of built that way. Yeah. I think it's appropriate that you're wearing, a John Deere hat, that, you're kind of like the operations farmer here and your family kind of gets to be a part of that aspect. Yeah. And, you're out on the 4-wheeler and you take your son with you.
But just as we kind of maybe bring this question to a close, the aspect of, if I've got my dial here on my phone and I'm moving it and my wife's across the table and I'm like, yep, turn it off. that is where the tension was. The tension was never in the amount of hours. The tension was there's zero expectation and no understanding of when those hours actually will be.
Yeah.
And what the involvement would be between the two of us. And when you can put that dial in the middle of the table and you can actually talk about it and have a conversation about it and say, hey, I really feel like the dial's going to have to be over here this week. If I do that, what's it going to do for you?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm always like, this day, and this day is great, but this day I need you to bring that dial back. I need you to make it work. And we have that conversation. And it's amazing how that changes them.
Yeah. That communication seems like it's such an important aspect.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So
also communicating it ahead of time. Because there's a couple times where I recently with a couple of projects that we've had where I've kind of like 2 or 3 days before, hey, I'm going to be in South Florida for 2 days. That conversation doesn't go as well as it would if you had it a month ago.
But let me encourage you with this. When you establish that it's important, and you get those reps and you practice and you practice and you practice, before you know it, that conversation does get easier.
Oh yeah.
It was one random night, like 9 something at night or whatever, something happened over here. Just a sensor was going off somewhere and I had to come check it.
Yeah.
And I just threw my shoes on, said, hey, I got to go check this. And I'll see you soon. I walked out the door. I didn't have to worry about coming back into the door to, right at bedtime, right as she had to put the kids down by herself. Like I didn't have to worry about showing up to an upset spouse.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Because I laid the foundation for that to happen. Those moments of you just walk out the door and it's part of the gig and it's part of what we signed up for as a family in this job.
And she wasn't upset in the moment. It's more of one of those things. And absolutely 100%. It's more of the fact that I feel like I didn't set her up for success to just be excited ahead of time. I more put her in a position where she's fighting off disappointment. It's true. She was very patient and understanding, and she's thankful for the opportunities I have. But like you said, it's doing that and building that culture, but still also when you communicate that ahead of time, it sets her more up for success.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that takes me, we're not gonna be able to get through all the questions. I have one more that I do want to hit on though, is you guys are talking about the amount of roles, the breadth of those roles. You're talking about how to balance your family. So how do you manage expectations? Because here's the thing. So it's easier. So you're managing expectations for your family. You're coming into these new roles. Like the family aspect is its own thing entirely. Now you have the people that you work with, the people who you serve alongside of, and the people that you serve, like the campers that come in, the families, the parents that are inevitably going to have something to say about how you're running that camp. How do you manage expectations when you're learning a role potentially, or passing on the reins to that role, or you've done it for a long time and something's changed? You have a family that you're trying to also kind of balance that life with. How do you manage the expectations of your, we'll call them clients for now, just to keep it as one big group of people.
Right.
But how do you manage the expectation of the clients, the people you work with?
Yeah. So we are each on a 3 to 5 year transition plan. Yeah. So it's like, it's not a fire hose of you have to get all of this done right now and you have to be proficient at all of this right away. Yeah. We both have access to our predecessors, which is kind of
huge.
It's not only a unique thing in ministry, it's a unique thing anywhere.
Absolutely.
It's especially a unique thing at Word of Life to have immediate access for those 3 to 5 years to your predecessor. Wild. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely wild. So the managing that expectation of, I already know it's going to be 5 years. Think of it this way. They're projecting it to be 5 years before I know the things that they want me to know. It would take way longer than that to know the things that my predecessor knows. And so even just to become proficient, I'm projected at 5 years. Well, the expectation's already been managed for me.
That's great.
It's already been put on the table in a very transparent way. It's going to take you a minute, bud. Okay. Don't think you're just going to jump in there and get this done. Okay.
That was in the offer. It said it's going to take you a minute, bud.
That's the expectation has been managed as it relates to transferring that expectation to our clientele. It's very important to keep the on stage, off stage. There are things that your clientele should see and there are things that your clientele should not see. So I love with a lot of our youth pastors, like I had a youth pastor at Reverb the other night. He asked me about something, longtime friends of the ministry, no matter what I told him, he would bring every one of his kids back to camp. Like, he's just one of those guys. He's like, what are you working on right now? And I just told him, I said, listen, I am working on this and it is absolutely kicking me right now.
Yeah.
Like I am really trying to figure this out. Well, I wouldn't have that conversation with everybody. Okay. Sure. You know, but I had a conversation with him because it was very appropriate in that moment.
Yeah.
But keeping that with your clientele, knowing who you're talking to, there's things you talk about with your youth pastor friend who you've known forever, who you've known forever here, and saying on stage in front of 600 people. Okay. Those are different conversations. So that's how you manage that. I think it's really, really important to obviously do your best, but knowing that your best will sometimes not be good enough. And you sometimes will have to, really put on that guest service hat and put on a smile and do your best.
Well, I'm sure there comes a lot of like expecting grace but also just like, you have to give a lot of grace to the people that are going to come to you, while also you expect grace from them and you're not going to get it. Yeah. I'm sure that can come to be very frustrating at times.
Yeah. Well, and just to use my new role as an example, and then you can use yours. One of the aspects of my operational role is interacting with a lot of donors, a lot of people who are on campus who love to volunteer and who serve and do phenomenal work. Yeah. But they've been doing it longer than I've even been at Word of Life. Okay. And so there's this and it's funny. The last few that I've met, it's been like, okay, so are you the guy? Like, are you the guy that I'm supposed to talk to about this? And I'm like, you know way more about this than I do. And so I got to make sure I can serve this situation. But I got to do it with humility. I got to just go in there and say, listen, I've looked at some people and say, listen, I know you know way more about this than me, but I'm the guy. And so let's have a conversation. I need you to help me and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to use my strengths and you're going to use your strengths. And we are going to leave all of our weaknesses behind us because we're not going to allow those to be exploited in the situation. We're just going to take our strengths and we're going to make this thing happen. And we're not going to play the victim on anything. We're just going to roll. That
right there, that victim thing, that's a hard one to learn. It's hard.
Yeah,
it's so easy to be like, listen, I'm doing my best, but I'm just not good enough. And then you just easily fall into that trap.
Well, and I've learned recently, like there's been some situations where I could easily just say, hey, listen, I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. I could do that. It wouldn't really help anything. I could do that. But instead I've actually started looking at some of those people and being like, hey, I failed you. I'm sorry.
Taking responsibility instead.
And you know what happened? It got way better. Because a lot of times, people don't need like compensation for what you've done wrong. If you just acknowledge it. I heard an illustration the other day of if you're rolling your suitcase through the airport and you roll over somebody's foot and you turn around and you say, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? They're like, yeah, what are you talking? It's no big deal. Like you barely hit my foot. But if you run over their toe with your bag, it doesn't even hurt them. And you just keep on going, they'll look at you different and they'll be like, what a jerk.
Wow.
But if you just acknowledge it, they're like, why are you even apologizing? It's not a big deal. But if you don't acknowledge it, what a dirtbag.
Wow.
Okay. And so I'm trying to like take that perspective and go, okay, I'm trying to manage expectations here. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but you know what? I failed. I didn't even know I failed, but I failed you. I'm sorry. How can I make it right? And before you know it, they're like, I don't even know how you can make it right. Let's figure this out.
You know what's cool though is seeing Ethan, seeing you kind of like hearing you talk about how you've had to grow into these things. Because all right, I've always looked up to you in the sense, and I've never told you this, so I'm going to tell you now. I've always looked up at you in the sense of like, man, Ethan's the guy who when he serves or does a job, he does it with such excellence and such grace and like has like all these things that he does so well. But I guess I never really thought about it. I never considered that you had to like learn those things as you made your way through this journey and this job. And it gives me some encouragement of like, man, I feel like I'm constantly failing in playing the victim. Like it's easy to be a victim. Like I fail in that all the time. I'm never going to be successful at it. Ethan must just be good at this thing automatically. But it's something you've built and something you've worked on and been sanctified through and grown in, Like, anyway, that's an encouragement to you guys too, as you're out there. I guess, so there, now I've told you. So, and everybody heard it, so I can't take it back. But as you guys are out there, like, that's something to consider is like, the guys before you who have learned these things and they're saying, hey, this is how I do this, or this is how I'm good at this part of my life. Like they've had to build that. They didn't just, there are some personality things I'm sure that, you're just a cool dude. So you just kind of like, you take things in stride, I'm assuming and you probably always have, Whereas
not always.
No?
Yeah.
So you learned that one too?
Not always. Oh yeah.
Okay, all right.
Kyle can tell you guys all the stories about that.
So we'll have to have you back on to hear all those stories then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll pass it off to Justin because I want to hear your thoughts on this before we wrap up.
I thought you did a really good job on managing the expectations of the people that you're serving. My thoughts immediately drifted towards managing the expectations of your team. If you're in a position of leadership and the people that you're managing, how do you manage those expectations? And I found two things that have been the most effective for me. The first one is vision casting. You got to make sure that they know what the goal is. Because if you give them a job description and say, here's your job, they're never going to know if they're doing it to a certain degree or they're doing it well enough or if they've gotten the job completely done until they know what the end result's supposed to look like. And so for the ministries department during the school year, I always try to cast a vision that people knowing what they're doing ahead of time and giving the opportunity to be excited about it and not have to worry about details and them having a smooth segue into that opportunity. Like they know where to go, who they're going to meet, what they're going to be doing and why we're doing it. Yeah. If they know that ahead of time, that is success. And we don't always hit it. There are times where plans but they know that. And so if their job is assigning the proper van or making sure that you're scheduling and communicating to the students, like they know what the end goal is supposed to look like. And so that allows their expectations of what they're supposed to be doing and what they're trying to accomplish to be pre-managed by the end result. You know, it gives them something to work towards. Okay, as I'm doing these small detailed day-to-day, does this help me achieve this? Okay, I'm communicating, but this is above and beyond. They don't really, this information isn't helpful. It's just scratching their over curiosity itch. It's taking away from my time to effectively communicate with other people. Okay, I'm not going to go do that thing. I'm going to go do this thing. Even though they could, it's not well rounding the whole goal. And so vision casting is definitely a big one. I would say that helps because it connects the day-to-day with the big picture. And so that the other one is, I had it in my mind. I was trying to hang on to it. It kind of ties into a little bit what it is, laying all of the cards you possibly can on the table that are appropriate to lay on the table. And so letting your team behind the curtain a little bit to an appropriate level helps a lot. Because it makes them also feel like they're included. It helps them to understand you're a vital part of this process. I'm trusting you with insider information because I think it's going to help you do your job better, because I value you and because you're a part of this team. Now, there obviously are certain things that I'm not going to tell my team. That's part of the being in leadership. The guillotine hits your neck first, and you own up to things that, in the way that you're managing your team. And you don't want to go into the room after your department messed up and go into your room and say, wow, you guys burned me. Like that. Never do that. That's you know, if someone doesn't do their job, you appropriately talk to them. But the things that I tell someone that I've been working with for a couple months versus been working with for 2 years now, versus the things that I'm even going to tell my wife. And there are cards even that I'll tell my wife anything and everything that's appropriate to tell, like not anything I've had in discipleship with guys that I've been talking about. We've discussed that and communicated that. But there are certain cards I don't lay on the table with my wife because it's just going to stress her out. Like she needs to know what's going on at work, how much it's consuming. But if I tell her about everything that stressed me out at work today, I'm not really trying to help her out. And this is kind of backtracking to that question, but I'm not helping her out in that regard. Really all I'm doing is trying to transfer my stress because I don't want to deal with it. I kind of want to make it her problem. So I go and just vent everything that's happening at work. It's the same thing with your team that you're managing though. There are certain stresses you bear as the leader that it's appropriate to help your team carry those things, but it's inappropriate to just say, hey, this is really stressing me out. Because I delegate to you, this is now your job and your problem. And so they know what you're dealing with and they know why you're dealing with it. It helps your team run so much more smoothly because they feel they feel empowered to do it. They feel valued as a part of the team that's doing it. And they have the whole picture. So they're not working with loose ends or unclear pictures and veering off course. And so that's how I found to manage during the summer. I think I've been able to do that more effectively during the school year because it's my sole focus. But when those two things are paired together, like people do, and they also own their roles more when you do that.
That's good.
Yeah, they really do. And when one of their expectations is to be a valued part of the team, and that expectation is fulfilled, man, that's how you send people off the fly, really.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I've been able to learn.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, good. Well, so we got to wrap up here. We got to get into small group, but thank you guys both just preliminarily. Like, thank you. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, perfect. We'll roll with it. Yeah.
If not, you can just edit it out.
Yeah, I'll just edit it out. Yeah. No, I really love hearing your guys' insight. And honestly, it's so cool to see where you both have grown in different areas into the roles you're doing. It makes me look and be like, okay, I don't have to be good at everything Justin's good at and everything Ethan's good at, but I need to continue to grow toward those things that I see the benefits in what God's doing in your guys' lives. So that's an encouragement to me. So
I'm going to sneak one closing thought in.
Please.
And that's this. I wrote this down. If someone came up to me and said, man, you know what? Honestly, Justin is a way better assistant camp director than you. He's a way better dean of ministries than you. I wrote down, what would my response be? Well, I think my response would be thank you. I'd probably buy him a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It means I won.
Yeah.
Like, think about it this way. Leaders who are endings can be a really good thing. Leaders who are trying to pass the baton, pass the role. It is important to let young leaders into your responsibilities in a way that makes you feel not threatened, but in a way that empowers them. Otherwise, we will have ministries that rise and rise and rise, and then they stop. And then we will have a different ministry pop up where all those young leaders left and went over and started this one. Yeah. It is really important to let young leaders have access to these responsibilities and empower them. Otherwise, they're just going to go do it somewhere else.
Yeah. So, wow. No, that's great.
Hey, you heard it here. If you want Ethan Warren to buy you a cup of coffee, tell him I am better than him. That is it.
I'll send you to Justin. He can buy you the coffee.
That's perfect. All right. So we're going to move now quickly into small groups. Small groups is a time where we talk about the fun things, the funny things, maybe the encouraging things that we're going through in our ministries. Maybe you're going through in your ministry. Send us an email at stackingchairspod@wol.org. Guys, I've gone through a couple emails. If you haven't heard back from me yet, I'm sorry. I've communicated back to some of you, and we'll be sure to share some of those in the future and some of the topics you guys have sent. So thank you for sending those. Guys, the question I have today for us, though, is what's like the funniest moment that you have when moving into the role, or something that you didn't expect that really hit you hard and just left you reeling when you moved into assistant camp director role alongside Kyle Gray? Both of you worked alongside Kyle Gray. Anything that sticks out?
If you're asking about funny stories about Kyle, we'll be here for another.
Well, we could do funny stories about Kyle too. That works. But I just mean
that sticks out.
What's that?
You're gonna have to go first. You're gonna have to go first.
Man. Oh, let's see.
The music died just as he said that too.
Dude, someone's got to tell the Bobby story.
Which one?
The one about when he transitioned.
Okay.
You tell that one. That's your story.
So Kyle and I are sitting in the van with Bobby. We were just driving around. We're talking about camp and stuff, and it was time to ask Bobby to become an assistant camp director.
Yeah.
And
if you don't know, Bobby's the assistant camp director up in New York right now.
Picture of Bobby Brown.
Yes. We can do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
There you go.
Nice.
I got you.
Okay. And so it was time to ask Bobby to be an assistant camp director. We're excited about having the three of us. It's going to be great. And this was about 2 years ago. And Kyle just decides we're just going to have this meeting in the van. Super informal, right?
Yeah.
And what I didn't know was Kyle was actually going to fire him from his first job before giving him that job.
Oh no, that's a Michael Scott move, man.
So I'm really glad I was driving because I at least had something to do. But I'm sitting there and we had parked and I'm sitting there and Kyle is like, hey, Bobby, listen, man, we love you. And it's a little more drawn out than this, but for the sake of time, Bobby, basically, we love you, man. You're great. We're going to go a different direction. And we're going to have somebody else be the camp coordinator. And if you know Bobby Brown is just taking this thing like a champ.
Okay.
Such total grace. Okay. Wow. Okay. Like he is just taking this firing with such grace. Yeah. It was a few minutes. It was the longest few minutes ever. I'm just staring out the window like I don't know how to be a part of this right now. I'm not good at this. If I did this, people would be crying. Okay. Yeah. And then he offers him the assistant camp director job. That was a good
brutal.
one. That was a really good one.
Only Kyle Gray can pull that off.
It was a tough moment, man. There was about 30 seconds in there that it was just real tough sledding right there.
That is literally in like the early seasons of The Office. Like that is like peak Michael Scott movie.
Oh my goodness.
That's so funny.
Okay, I found mine.
Yeah,
I found mine. So we're sitting down. I got an invite from the head of the Bible Institute here in Florida, Mark Straub. An invite with him and me, the two of us, and Mark. And the only tagline was wanting to discuss the future of the ministries department. And so I'm sitting here thinking,
this was more Cloak and Dagger. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they got me so bad on this one. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, he's gonna go and review everything we've done all year, give us his thoughts of what went well, what didn't go well. So I grabbed my laptop, I got the notes like pre-filled out, ready to like punch in, soak in all this and talk about it and go back with him and digest. So I sit down at the table, I pull my laptop, I'm sitting there, and then I can't remember exactly what he said, but
so Mark threw it to me. Mark, Ethan, why don't you go ahead and just kind of set up the conversation here?
Yeah.
Justin's like,
he's like, so do you want to, Mark looks at him, he's like, how about we go ahead and start telling him what's going on with you? And then Justin's just like, I'm sitting there and they both kind of look at me and then it just clicks in my mind. So I have a feeling I'm not going to need this anymore. And Mark goes, yeah, probably not. I closed the laptop and pushed it to the side. And that was when the plan to have this segue from him going to came into action. But that was just funny because I was they got me so bad on that one.
Was it on purpose?
Not see it coming.
No, we really couldn't take the chance of it. Pieces were moving. A lot of people were involved in the pieces, and we didn't want anyone's news to get spoiled. So we really had to make sure that no one had any inkling of what was going on.
They did it very well.
It wasn't a long period of time. It was a short period of time. But it was a couple of days where we just really had to hold our cards close, and so it wasn't. It was just a meeting.
I feel like they pulled one over on me. I felt proud of themselves for that one. It's funny.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, that's been Small Group, and that's been our episode of Stacking Chairs. Guys, we have been talking about what's it look like to pass the reins back to you from somebody else. Guys, thank you so much to both of you for your insight on this. This is really great. I hope it's been an encouragement to all you guys. Again, if you're not following us on social media, follow us on Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere except Twitter. And that's no reason. It's just because pod didn't fit on the end of our Twitter handle, so we just didn't do Twitter. So check us out on social media. Leave some comments, leave some thoughts on today's episode. We'd love to hear from you.
Until we get an email from Elon Musk saying, hey, I really want your podcast on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, he might.
He might.
That'll be the day.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.